Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Thursday, and we have a lot of tragic stuff to report today. Not by choice, that's just what's happening. Today, a bunch of bad things, or I guess not even today, probably yesterday also, bad things happened. New reports on many different things, and let's get started on our Thursday episode of Before Coffee. Let me turn off that. Today on Before Coffee, train hits and kills 5 track maintenance workers in northern Italy.
We update Hurricane Adalia as it hits Florida with 125-mile-an-hour winds.
Criticism of refusing accompanied asylum seeker in Belgium in violation of the law.
We have a tragic fire in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Germany and U.S. train Saudi forces accused of killing Yemen migrants.
And a judge holds Giuliani liable in Georgia election workers' defamation case. And that'll be part of us updating our Squeal of Fortune today on the last day of August 31st, 2023 edition of Before Coffee. Peter Navarro, unless he's on there.
You have to add
already.
Peter Navarro. The Squeal of Fortune.
Unless he's already on there. I'm already around.
No, he's not on here. Peter Navarro. I'm gonna pretend I know how to spell his name. It doesn't matter.
But you can spell
Nobody
it
needs
wrong.
to see it.
He's a douchebag. We can spell it wrong.
Okay.
It's a great video. Great video.
First news story of the day, which is not happy news. Unfortunately, a train has hit some maintenance workers. All they wanted to do is make sure the train runs, and instead they got ran over for it. This is from Lorenzo Tondo in Palermo and agencies. 5 railway workers have been killed in northern Italy after being hit by a train while carrying out overnight maintenance work. Italian media reported on Thursday. Paolo Bodoni, the mayor of Brandizzo, told the AGI news agency an emergency worker had described to him a chilling scene with human remains across 300 meters. "It's a huge tragedy," he said, adding that an investigation was underway. Police said that the train, which was transporting wagons on the Milan-Turin line and was not in commercial service, was traveling at 160 kilometers an hour, or 99 miles per hour, when, shortly before midnight, it hit a team replacing parts of the track near Brandizzo, on the outskirts of Turin, the AGI and ANSA news agency reported. The 2 colleagues working nearby managed to escape, including the foreman. The train driver was in shock, but otherwise unharmed, ANSA reported. Yeah, he's gonna have to go to therapy for a long time. "We were at a bar right in front of the station when we heard a loud noise, like an accident, but with something dragging something else behind it," a woman from Brandizzo told Corriere della Sera newspaper. She said her boyfriend rushed to see what was happening and was faced with a horrifying scene. "And now he's in shock," the woman said. The RFI, which manages Italy's rail network, confirmed that 5 deaths in the statement to the news agency and said an investigation was taking place. It offered its deep sorrow about what happened and extends its condolences to the families of the deceased workers. The leader of CISL, Italy's second largest trade union confederation, described the accident as outrageous. "It leaves us dismayed," Luigi Sbarra said on social media. 5 workers are dead. 5 families, to whom we send our condolences, have been destroyed by the lack of safety measures," he continued. "This umpteenth tragedy is an outrage to all Italian workers." Bodoni told Corriere della Sera, "The rescuers told me that they witnessed a chilling scene." Yeah, we already read that. I don't want to read it anymore. We understand.
No. Okay, it's pretty awful.
People were crushed against the train. It is not to be excluded that there may have been a communication error between the team on site and those who were supposed to coordinate the work on the tracks. In any case, we will have to await the outcome of the investigation. "I don't know if 160 kilometers per hour is the right speed for a train passing through a station. It is something I'd wondered about as a citizen." Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. It depends on the train. At least here in the Netherlands, it's the only trains I can really talk about. If the train is supposed to be going to not stopping at station ever, it goes pretty fast. It's pretty scary, actually. But it's usually on a track that's farther away from the I can't think of the English word, the spore, the station area, right? There's 2 tracks and it's on the farthest track, so you don't accidentally, grab somebody's coat and drag them across the station. But this looks like it was, very odd that a train was even running this late and going that fast, I guess.
Gross.
But there will be an investigation,
Terrible
and I'll
tragedy.
keep an eye out for updates on it to see exactly what happened. So, your story.
Okay, so we're going to go from one tragedy to another one. This is a weather-related tragedy. This is Hurricane Dahlia. This is from Associated Press, Terry Spencer. Hurricane Dahlia tore into Florida at the speed of fast-moving train. An unfortunate choice of words. Wednesday, splitting trees in half, ripping roofs of hotels, and turning small cars into boats before sweeping into Georgia and South Carolina as a still powerful storm that flooded roadways and sent residents running for higher ground. All hell broke loose, said Belond Thomas of Perry, a mill town located just inland from the Big Bend region where Idalia came ashore. Thomas fled with her family and some friends to a motel, thinking it would be safer than riding out the storm at home. But as Idalia's eye passed over about 8:30 a.m., a loud whistling noise pierced the air, and the high winds ripped the building's roof off, sending debris down on her pregnant daughter, who was lying in bed. Fortunately, she was not injured. It was frightening, Thomas said. Things were just going so fast, everything was spinning. After coming ashore, Dahlia made landfall near Keaton Beach at 7:45 a.m. as a high-end Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds near 125 mph, which is 205 kph.
Wow.
The system remained a hurricane as it crossed into Georgia with top winds of 90 miles per hour or 150 kilometers per hour. It weakened to a tropical storm by late Wednesday afternoon, and its winds had dropped to 60 miles per hour by Wednesday night. Hurricane Idalia made landfall Wednesday in Florida as a Category 3 storm and unleashed devastating winds along the Gulf Coast. That's for a picture, I guess. As the eye moved inland, high winds shredded signs, blew off roofs, not blew off roads. That would be a really powerful storm. Blew off roofs, set sheet metal flying, and snapped tall trees. Snapped tall trees, not all trees. One person was killed in Georgia. No hurricane-related deaths were significantly confirmed in Florida. But Florida Highway Patrol reported 2 people dying in separate weather-related crashes just hours before Idalia made landfall. The storm brought strong winds to Savannah, Georgia, Wednesday evening as it made its way towards the Carolinas. It was forecast to move nearer along the coast of South Carolina through Wednesday night and just off the coast of North Carolina on Thursday before heading out into the Atlantic Ocean. Idalia spawned a tornado that briefly touched down in Charleston, South Carolina, suburb of Goose Creek, the National Weather Service said. Since when is Charleston, South Carolina, a suburb of Goose Creek?
Yeah.
That's a weird sentence. Okay. The wind sent a car flying and flipped it over, according to authorities in an eyewitness video. 2 people received minor injuries. Along South Carolina's coast, North Myrtle Beach, Garden City, and Edisto Island all reported ocean water flowing over sand dunes and spilling into beachfront streets Wednesday evening. In Charleston, storm surge from the Idalia topped the seawall that protects the downtown, sending ankle-deep ocean water into the streets and neighborhoods where horse-drawn carriages pass million-dollar homes in famous open-air market. Preliminary data showed that Wednesday evening the high tide reached just over 9 feet, more than 3 feet above normal, and the 5th highest reading in Charleston Harbor since records were first kept in 1899. Florida had feared the worst while still recovering from last year's Hurricane Ian, which hit the heavily populated Fort Myers area, leaving 149 dead in the state. Unlike that storm, Idalia blew in a very lightly inhabited area known as Florida's Nature Coast, one of the state's most rural regions that lies far from crowded metropolis cities and busy tourist areas and features millions of acres of undeveloped land. So there's about 10 more paragraphs we're not going to get into. Needless to say, lots of destruction, not a lot of death.
Yeah.
Not so far anyway. They could be
stay safe
uncovering
there,
bodies.
the south of the U.S., and hopefully they, there's a reason those countries are flat, because otherwise you'd be knocking over a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Hit a lightly populated area is the biggest reason.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to our next story, which is about refugees in Belgium. There's a lot of criticism coming at Belgium because they intend to not provide shelter for What?
Oh,
You want to roll the Squeal of Fortune?
the Squeal of Fortune. Before we get too far, I want to be able to research my story. Okay.
All right.
Squeal of Fortune.
All
right.
I forgot I was supposed to do it with you.
The crowd noises. You need the crowd noises.
You gotta count me down or something. What? Okay, let's go. Putting on screen. Spinning now.
The winner is
Kathy Latham? Kathy Latham.
all right. Well, you mentioned her the other day. So all right, on your story.
Okay. We'll find a story on Kathy.
All right.
Back to my story. A lot of criticism towards Belgium as they refuse to provide shelter for single men who apply for asylum for the time being. This is from NOS. And it is contrary to Belgian and European legislation. That is what Hannah Beerens, director of the think tank Migration Policy Institute Europe, says to NOS. She also expects consequences for the Netherlands. Yesterday, the Belgian Secretary of State for Asylum, Nicole Demore, announced that there is currently no room for that specific group due to a shortage of reception locations in the country. Demore said he wanted to give priority to families and children. The plan almost immediately drew criticism from human rights organizations. Now, the Migration Policy Institute Europe also joins that group. The latter advises the European Commission, among others. Director Beerens has said it is problematic because the plan does not comply with both Belgian and European legislation. According to her, the legislation allows the standard for reception to be adjusted when there is a shortage in asylum reception. But you are not allowed to give shelter to certain groups, she emphasizes. At a European level, about 70% of people applying for asylum are men. This also applies to Belgium specifically, but for the time being, women, families, and unaccompanied minors in Belgium are given priority for a reception place if they apply for asylum. According to the Belgium Secretary of State, this is necessary to prevent children from having to sleep on the street. Belgium has about 33,500 places, but last year, according to fatherdaughter, the institution responsible for the reception, there were about 37,000 asylum applications. It's unclear how long the measures will remain in effect. Human rights organizations already emphasized yesterday that the measure amounts to exclusion. This is absolutely not in accordance with international or Belgian law. Reception must be provided for everyone, the president of the League of Human Rights told VRT yesterday. The organization pointed out that single men are also vulnerable to violence and abuse. Yeah, if you're single by yourself with no community, you'll be desperately doing anything to get money, to get food on your plate, anything. So, yeah, that causes an increase in crime because, somebody's looking for people, the most desperate of people, and they're like, hey, you want to smuggle some people? You want to smuggle some drugs? Anything, right? The worst things. You want to go mug people on the street? Yeah, sure. I will starve tomorrow if I don't mug somebody tomorrow. So, As Human Rights Commissioner Dunja Mijatovic of Council of Europe warned today at the AP news agency that this decision will have serious consequences for the health of asylum seekers in Belgium and Europe. She is also concerned about human rights violations. Byrons points out that the Belgian state has now received several penalty sentences because the reception in the country is inadequate. The Federal Migration Center Miria reports that the state has already been convicted more than 7,000 times. That's a lot of fines that have already been issued, Byrons emphasizes. Those fines remain unpaid. Since the corona crisis, the number of reception places in Belgium have been reduced, according to Byrons. But now the pandemic is over. The number of asylum seekers and migrants is picking up again. Since corona, there has been an increase in the number of people who come here. That is also the case in the Netherlands and Austria. Now you have a big gap between what is available in terms of shelters and between the numbers of people who come here. Byrons fears that the policy of the state secretary will face reaching consequences for the asylum chain in Belgium and neighboring countries, including the Netherlands. Minister-President Rudy Vervoort of the Brussels region also expects this. On Twitter, he called the Moors plans worrying. He expects that he will need to lead a new influx of homeless people into the Brussels region. The city of Brussels has been struggling with reception problems for some time now. In March, a tent camp in the city center was evacuated, where asylum seekers sometimes lived for months in appalling conditions. The same thing happened a month earlier with an office building that housed hundreds of asylum seekers. Byrons fears that such scenes will occur more often with the new policy. She does not expect the influx of asylum seekers will decrease. What you see is that when the legal routes for adults are closed, unaccompanied minors are more often sent ahead by the family, in the hope that they can access the system and bring their family over. Byrons therefore expects that women or young people will often take dangerous migration routes. According to her, this also has consequences in the Netherlands. Because although De Moor's policy is aimed at discouraging asylum seekers from coming to Belgium, the influx of asylum seekers will, according to Byrons, shift to other European countries. It's a waterbed effect. A unilateral decision by Belgium causes problems in other European countries, she says. Moreover, this policy stands in the way of a European solution. I think at some point we're going to have to become a united European Federation long in the future from now, when we're living in a hellscape of climate change. And they're going to be like, yeah, we need to start separating, lotting out places, because there's going to be a lot of people going north because they won't be able to live south anymore. It's going to be too hot to live in the Mediterranean.
You're ready for freshwater refugees.
Exactly.
Well, it's already happened.
Yeah. This is just like the first small trickles of it. It's not just war and ravaging, it's also climate change.
Yep, and the Pentagon, at least when Obama was in charge, was treating climate change as a national security issue, which it is.
It is.
Yeah. You definitely want stability worldwide, because you can't have everybody going to one place.
Yeah, which is what's going to happen, right? Everyone's going to...
Ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna work, folks. We're not that crowded of a planet, but when we have strife and... Well, speaking of strife, I'm sorry, it's probably your story.
No, that was the end.
Oh, okay. This is from New York Times. This is another tragedy. South Africa. Byline would be John Elgin and Lindsay Chutel. South Africa fire, at least 73 dead. The fire tore through a building in downtown Johannesburg early on Thursday, killing at least 73 people and injuring dozens of others, city officials says. Authorities are still trying to determine what caused the blaze, which consumed a 5-story abandoned building that had been overtaken by squatters and become a spiraling informal settlement. I imagine it's just one of them fires, that somebody set to keep warm, maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Since it was vagrants. Megsini Shwaku, a Johannesburg city councilman who oversees public safety, said that when he arrived at the scene, the structure was in flames and people were jumping out of it. It is one of many dilapidated buildings in the city where people without places to stay have taken up residence, Mr. Shwaku said in an interview with an ENCA, a South African television news station. People often light fires inside these informal settlements to keep warm, Mr. Shwaku said. Many abandoned buildings in the city have been taken over because of a shortage of affordable housing. Oh yes, rich people driving people out of housing and then blaming the poor people. By mid-morning, the fire had been extinguished and firefighters were combing the scene floor by floor, searching for bodies. Smoke still rose from the story where the fire is believed to have started. Mayor Caballo Gomanda of Johannesburg told reporters at the scene that the 5-story building was owned by the city, which had leased it to a nonprofit organization that provides emergency housing for women, but he said the nonprofit has subsequently abandoned its operations there. Oh, okay. The Johannesburg building, where the deadly fire occurred on Thursday, was one of several places that journalists from the New York Times visited in May while reporting for an article about the chaotic state of the city. Well, that was timely. Nobody in the city was paying attention to the article, but hey, at least the New York Times reported on it.
Yeah, right.
Residents of the apartment complex across the street described the building, which was once an apartheid government checkpoint for black workers, as a nightmare. It had become a huge squatter camp in the city in the grip of a housing crisis. And again, we're going to blame the poor people for the housing crisis. They always get the blame. The people with no money caused the problem, right? People in the neighboring complex said that heard screams at night and sounds that they thought could be gunfire or fireworks. Cars have been stolen from the side of the street, only to be found hidden on the other side of the building where the fire broke out on Thursday. Pickpockets and thieves would target visitors and disappear into the squalid building, impossible to find, the neighbors said. Drug dealers hung out around the outside. In the courtyard, corrugated iron shacks had sprung up. Last year, a woman was thrown from the 4th floor of the building, several residents said. When the Times visited, trash sagged out from the 2nd floor windows. Another pile of trash, at least 3 feet high, partially blocked the entrance. A street vendor, balancing a crate of oranges on her head, skirted the trash heaps as she entered the building. I'm surprised more fires haven't happened, said Mary Gillette de Klerk, a coordinator for the Johannesburg Homeless Network, calling the fire on Thursday an event waiting to happen. She said that the dearth of shelters and affordable housing in Johannesburg had compelled many poor people to squat in overcrowded buildings, sometimes with no sewage service, electricity. Occupants of such spaces get by with makeshift systems to cook or light their spaces, she said, and squatters divide regular-sized rooms into tiny subsections and rent them out. People live in really, really cramped conditions. Speaking to South African news channel Enka, a concerned woman relayed how she had arrived on the scene to look for her daughter who lived in the building. The mother, whom the station did not name, said her daughter had been living there for more than a year and had struggled with drugs. She had tried several times to check on her daughter and drop off supplies for her at the building, but her daughter would shun her, the mother said. Every time she come out, she runs away. Everybody's saying she was in the building when the fire erupted, so they don't know if she survived. So there's a sad personal story at the end. And the New York Times reporters must be really mad about this because they reported on it in May. And, you know, the richest guy in the world is from where? South Africa? Mm-hmm. And he's in the United States all the time telling us how to run our country? Maybe go back to South Africa, Elon Musk, and fix some shit there. Mr. Richest guy in the world.
God forbid you know.
Yeah. God
help
forbid
the
you leave
people who are
up.
struggling in the country you were born in.
Stop trying to fuck with our politics and fix your country, old Elon. Not that you're the powerful person or anything, you know. Not that you're rich and you can build a building and 50 buildings like this and house people and solve the problems in your country. But come to the United States and tell us how to live. Your story.
Okay.
I didn't mean to turn into a personal attack on Elon Musk, but it really is sickening.
Yeah, for sure. Especially since it's been reported on since May and nobody's done anything. Not a single person.
South Africa is not a poor country. It is not a poor country.
It's not.
Your story.
Okay. In more country news, Germany and US trained Saudi forces are killing people they shouldn't be killing. This is from Peter Beaumont and Manisha Ganguly and Julian Borger in Washington. Saudi border forces accused of killing hundreds of people trying to cross the border from their neighboring Yemen received training from Germany and the US. Is this something they were taught in class? I have no idea. I hope not. Despite growing concerns over the scale of human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia under the country's crown prince and prime minister, Mohammed bin Salman, both the German Federal Police Service and the U.S. military have been involved in training Saudi border forces implicated by the UN and human rights NGOs in mass killings. Significantly, the U.S. training agreement, the funding for which ended last month, stipulated that the U.S. was required to monitor how its training was being used, with those receiving training only allowed to operate defensively to protect themselves and their sites from attack. The scales of abuses was revealed by the Human Rights Watch in a shocking report earlier this month. It alleged that Saudi border forces had used explosive weapons to target mainly Ethiopian migrants and asylum seekers attempting to cross the border from Yemen, claims that had been denied by Saudi Arabia. Amid growing outcry over the claims, The Guardian has also been told that Saudi Arabia has increasingly treated illegal incursions across its border as counter-terrorism issues, authorizing the use of lethal force. The Guardian has been told that Saudi Arabia employs extensive and centrally monitored electronic surveillance on the border area, meaning it should be able to distinguish groups of trafficked civilians from those involved in armed incursions from Yemen or drug smuggling. The disclosure elevates the question of whether Riyadh has been deliberately targeting migrants trying to cross the border, which Human Rights Watch has suggested would amount to crime against humanity if it was established by official policy. The Guardian has established that the U.S. military training of Saudi forces, including border forces, had been part of the long-running military support program known as MOI-MAG, Ministry of Interior Military Assistance Group, with the U.S. involved in training border forces beginning in 2008. The agreement to train Saudi border forces required the Pentagon to draw up a unique technical cooperation agreement to allow the U.S. forces to train a non-military force for the first time, requiring the monitoring of the use to which U.S. trained units were being put by the Saudis. Confirming the long-running U.S. training of Saudi border forces, a U.S. official told The Guardian, "The U.S. Army Security Assistance Command provided border guards training, which has been funded for a period from 2015 to 2023, with the funding period ending July of this year." The official did not explain why the funding had ended. For its part, the German training of Saudi border forces was undertaken by the federal police. Beginning in 2009, the program continued well into 2020, with a brief interruption after the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Turkey. In 2015, the German program came under fire again when a Saudi blogger, Raif Badawi, was sentenced to 1,000 lashes and 10 years in prison as a punishment. In 2017, after a visit by German Chancellor Angela Merkel to the kingdom, the training of Saudi Arabian border guards was formalized further, with the German Federal Police announcing a wide-ranging training program at the Saudi Border Guard Academy and its regional offices. German and U.S. training missions ran in tandem with an effort by Saudi Arabia to upgrade its border security with surveillance technologies, which have raised additional serious questions over why Saudi authorities were unable to distinguish between civilians and armed individuals at the Yemen border. Publicly issued tenders for the system over the recent years show Riyadh seeking a sophisticated and centralized surveillance network for its borders, including CCTV, thermal imaging, and ground motion sensors. While it's unclear how many of those systems have been deployed, The Guardian has been told the real-time surveillance capabilities have been installed in border areas, including the ability to monitor the border both from regional control rooms and from the Riyadh. Eleonora Ardemangi, an Italian researcher in the Gulf and Yemen, who has studied the increasingly militarization of the Saudi response on the border with Yemen, describes the policy as even more highly centralized under the control of the Ministry of Interior in recent years. Since 2015, at the start of the war in Yemen, in late 2014, what I have been struck by on the Saudi side is a rise of multiple security players operating on the border. While this means more capacity, it also means it is even more difficult to understand who provides security on specific parts of the border, said Ardemangi, who is at the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, ISPI. Among new players who have emerged in tandem with the increase in migrant deaths is the Al-Afwaj Regiment, which answers directly to the Ministry of the Interior. There has also been increase in the use of foreign forces, notably Sunni Yemens, recruited as contractors for the country's south. The militarization of the border comes at a time when the border issue has come to be seen by Saudi Arabia as a key national security issue. It is part of Riyadh's understanding that the border issue will be more and more decisive in the way it manages not just the Yemeni dossier, but in terms of economic security. They want to secure the border as first priority, and only then see if the Yemen parties can come to a durable ceasefire. Given the monitoring technology on the border and the increased centralization of the response, Ardamangi is skeptical that the Saudis would not be aware of circumstances of migrant deaths. The centralized approach to the border issue makes it less credible that the Saudis lack knowledge of what is happening there. However, the proliferation of security players also makes it harder to identify who is committing these alleged crimes without real cooperation by Riyadh. So people are being killed at the border, but everyone's acting like they don't know who and how and where. And even though there's supposedly really high technological border security programs running, to really pay attention to, if you see a bunch of people getting shot down at the border. But
how bad are civil rights in your country if you're trying to go to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's been in war since 2014, so.
Yeah. All right, so is it my story now?
Yeah, that's the end of mine.
Okay, so we're going on to our Squeal of Fortune. A quick and short update of our Squeal of Fortune. Who is Kathy Latham, former Coffee County GOP chair, indicted in election interference case? This is from WSB-TV in Atlanta, Georgia. A Georgia grand jury voted to indict former President Donald Trump and 18 of his allies, including former GOP chairwoman of South Georgia. Most people had never heard of Kathy Latham before 2020. She had to explain to a room full of state senators investigating potential voter fraud who she was. I am the under 80,000 caucus chair for the Georgia GOP. I'm over 129 rural counties of Georgia. I'm also the chair for the Republican Party of Coffee County, Latham testified. While flying under the radar for most people, Latham was a player within the Georgia Republican Party, particularly in South Georgia. She was one of the so-called false electors who meant to cast their votes for then President Trump, something the January 6th committee insisted was part of the larger failed conspiracy to replace the lawful Democratic electors in several key states, including Georgia, and replace them with Trump electors. She stood up and signed her name to the document declaring her vote for Trump, even as illegal Democratic electors were one floor up casting their ballots for Joe Biden. Back in the hearing, Latham told senators stories of massive problems with the Dominion voting machines before and on election day. She insisted when the Georgia Secretary of State office followed up with an investigation, they did it only to intimidate her and others. The 3 people from the Secretary of State's office showed up with guns and badges and handcuffs and 2 Dominion tech reps. They came with the intent of intimidation. The Secretary of State's office called the claims nonsense, which they patently are. But then, just the day after the January 6th insurrection on the U.S. Capitol, security video showed Latham outside the Coffee County Elections Office, opening the door to a secure area and leading a team of investigators linked to the election denier, Sidney Powell. There, those techs allegedly illegally downloaded data from the Dominion voting machines as Latham and others looked on. After being declared a possible target for criminal investigation, later joined Trump in a motion to toss out the Special Purpose Grand Jury's investigation and bar Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis from prosecuting the case because they wanted in federal court, where they're guilty. And in related news, a federal judge on Wednesday held Rudy Giuliani liable in defamation lawsuit brought by 2 Georgia lecturers. That's right, Rudy has been found liable, basically being found guilty, who say they were falsely accused of fraud, ruling that former New York City mayor gave only lip service to complying with his legal obligations while trying to portray himself as a victim in the case. Oh, you're a victim, Rudy. You're a victim of senility. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell said the punishment was necessarily because Giuliani ignored his duty as a defendant to turn over information requested by election workers Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shea Moss as part of their lawsuit. The decision moves the case towards a trial in Washington that could result in Giuliani being ordered to pay significant damages to the women, in addition to tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees already being directed to pay. The workers' complaint from December 21 accused Giuliani and one of Donald Trump's lawyers and confidant of the former Republican president of defaming them by falsely stating that they engaged in a fraud while counting ballots at State Farm Marine in Atlanta. In a statement Wednesday, the women said they had endured a living nightmare and an unimaginable wave of hatred and threats because of Giuliani's comments. Nothing can restore all we lost, but today's ruling is yet another neutral finding that is confirmed what we have known all along. There was never any truth to any of the accusations about us, that we did nothing wrong. We were smeared for purely political reasons, and the people responsible can and should be held responsible, they said. The ruling compounds the legal jeopardy for Giuliani at the time when he and Trump are among the 19 defendants charged this month in a racketeering case related to the efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. It creates a potential for a massive financial penalty for Giuliani as the case proceeds to a federal trial in Washington, where a jury would determine damages he may be liable for. He may have a final opportunity to produce the requested information known under the law's discovery, but could face additional sanctions if he fails to do so. In the meantime, Howell said Giuliani and his business entities must pay the $130,000 in attorney's fees.
Wow.
Yes. Howell expressed skepticism at Giuliani's claims that he cannot afford to reimburse the plaintiffs in the case, noting that he recently listed his apartment in Manhattan for $6.5 million and was reported to have flown via private plane to Atlanta to surrender to charges there.
Yeah, so
he
you're
has pleaded
dude.
Not guilty. Sell your $6.5 million apartment, give that money to these two women.
Yeah,
all of it.
Who's basically lived in hell because of your lies. Giuliani
needs an apartment he's going to have his own apartment. It's going to be called the Gray Bar Hotel. Howell said that aside from the initial document production of 193 pages, the information Giuliani had turned over consisted largely of a single page of communication blobs and indecipherable data. That's basically describes Giuliani, a blob of indecipherable data. Okay, I can't end with a better line than that. So, your story.
We're ending it there. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to get nailed for millions of dollars. It's just up to the jury now. The judge already said you're liable unless you come up with a reason you're not. You're liable. He hasn't even cooperated. He's like, whatever. I'm a lawyer. I'll get to it later. Whatever.
I'll figure it out at some point. Yeah,
I
ruined people's lives, but I'm just gonna claim that I can't pay for it, and their lives are ruined, and I'm happy about that.
He's just running the clock. He's running the clock till he can use the Mitch McConnell defense of, my brain stopped working completely.
I thought you were going to report on that, by the way. I didn't know.
That's sad, man. It's sad.
It's just like, dude was asked a question and he stopped. Okay.
Old fascist piece of shit. Well, I guess, I guess somebody could stand there and yell at him for 20 minutes and he can't do nothing because he's brain locked.
Okay.
Your story.
Okay. In culture news, or pop culture news, Nick Carter, Backstreet Boys star, sued for alleged 2003 sexual assault of 15-year-old. The boy band singer denies allegations made by the woman known as AR, as well as those in 2 other sexual assault lawsuits currently filed against him. This is from Ben Beaumont Thomas on The Guardian. Nick Carter, singer with pop group Backstreet Boys, has been sued by a woman who alleges he sexually assaulted her in the 3rd lawsuit he is currently facing. The woman, identifies as AR, alleges that Carter assaulted her across 3 separate incidents in 2003 when she was 15 and he was 23, and that Carter gave her the sexual transmitted infection HPV. She is seeking $15,000 in damages. Her lawyer, Margaret Mobby, said, "We hope the AR receives some measure of justice and that this lawsuit will pave the way for the other survivors to hold their abusers to account." Carter is alleged to have known AR as a family friend, first assaulting her on his family yacht, then a bus on his family's property, and then later incident on the yacht which he allegedly invited 3 other men to watch. Carter denies these allegations, with his lawyer Dale A. Hayes Jr. describing them as ridiculous and malicious in a statement to the Los Angeles Times. Prior to the civil suit, AR had filed criminal complaints against Carter in 2 U.S. states shortly after the alleged assaults, but the authorities did not press charges. Repeating the same false allegation is a new legal complaint. Doesn't make them any more true, Hayes said. Another of AR's lawyers, John Kawai, said, "Abusers can't take notice that just because they avoided prison doesn't mean they don't have to answer a jury for their actions." Carter also currently faces a lawsuit from Melissa Schumann, once a singer with the girl group Dream, who first accused him of sexual assault in 2017, with the alleged incident dating back to 2002, when she was 18 and they were working on a movie together. Carter is accused of drugging and raping her in a relentless assault, which he denies. She reported the incident to police, but charges could not be made because of the incident passing the statute of limitations in 2013. In April, she filed a lawsuit against Carter saying, "I'm fighting to make the music industry a safer place to work and perform." Carter's lawyer, Leon K. Wakayama, said Schumann was plotting to damage and defame and extort her client. On Wednesday, in Las Vegas court, Carter was granted the right to countersue Schumann for defamation. After the ruling, Wakayama framed Schumann's allegations as a brazen attempt to get rich off of him. Today's ruling confirms that Nick will be able to pursue that truth to its inevitable conclusion. Carter is also countersuing a third woman who has sued him for alleged sexual assault. Shannon Shea Ruth filed her suit in December, alleging that Carter had raped her on a tour bus after a Backstreet Boys concert in 2001, when she was 17 and he was 21. Like Schumann, she alleges he infected her with HPV. Carter's lawyers called the claims entirely untrue, then later, when countersuing, claimed that Ruth and Schumann were in joint conspiracy to harass and defame and extort Carter, and that Ruth's lawyer's lawsuit was launched and bolstered by the Me Too movement. They claimed Carter and Backstreet Boys had lost over $2 million in revenue due to brand partners and concert promoters cutting ties with the group after the allegations. Carter's career with the Backstreet Boys has been hugely successful since the group formed in 1993 and became a defining boy band of the decade, gaining global hits with songs such as I Want It That Way and Everybody, Backstreet's Back. Their success continued despite Schulman's 2017 allegations, with the 2019 album DNA topping the US Billboard chart. Their most recent album is 2022's A Very Backstreet Christmas, which reached the top US 20, though an accompanying TV special was canceled following Ruth's allegations. So I'm not here to say who's guilty or who's not guilty, but that's just the news here. Yeah, Nick Carter has been accused of, by many people, well, 3 people, sexual assault. Two saying that they contracted HPV, which in a court of law, you can definitely look at medical records, I suppose. Did he go to the doctor for HPV? Then, whatever.
That's pretty easy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
the shocking part to me, she's only asking for $15,000.
Yeah, but she's trying to make money off of him, right?
$15,000 is not going to do nothing to anybody's life, really. Like,
no.
2 months later, you forget you even had it.
Two months like of rent at this point, like.
Yeah, it's like whatever. I mean, that doesn't even seem like a month to even sue for. I was thinking 15,000. Well, not 15 million, or
no,
100,000, something substantial to at least get you out of poverty. I don't know.
Yeah.
15,000 just isn't big money anymore. Well, he's taking care of. He's at least. She's at least not a gold digger, I guess.
Yeah. So you can't use that as your defense.
That can't be your defense. Oh, she's just trying to get rich off me. $15,000. Write her a check, dude. Well,
that's a settlement. That's a freaking settlement. Like I paid him $50,000, and we don't talk about this court case ever again.
She's just gonna hand it to her lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody make it stop. Okay. If you're going to have a lawsuit, make it for some real money. 1864, Confederates evacuated from Atlanta. This day in history. During the American Civil War, the Confederate evacuation of Atlanta began in 1864. You hear that, Atlanta? You lost. You lost the war. Stop pretending you won. Okay, that's our feature event. Also happening on today, In 12 CE, Roman Emperor Caligula was born. His brief reign, 37 to 41, which was marked by the unpredictable and tyrannical behavior. But it made a X-rated movie starring Helen Mirren.
Ooh.
1751. It was made by the Penhouse publisher, Caligula.
Okay.
1751. Robert Clive of Britain seized Arcot, India, and then withstood a 53-day siege that began a few weeks later. How about that? In 1850, King Kamehameha III officially declared Honolulu City and the capital of his kingdom. In 1888, the mutilated body of Marianne Nichols was discovered in the Whitechapel district of London's East End, and many believe she was the first victim of Jack the Ripper. They knew his name was Jack. Why didn't they just round up everybody named Jack? You know? If it was Jack the Ripper. Anybody named John? Johnny? John Boy? 1966, the Harrier jump jet fighter bomber made its first flight, also known as the Widowmaker in the Marine Corps. Well, one of several. Yeah. Harriers are, it's like the Osprey. I could report on that. They had an Osprey crash the other day. I didn't know this.
Another Widowmaker, yeah.
Yeah. Marines died. 1980, Polish labor activist Lech Walesa and Mikosław Jagielski, Poland's first deputy premier, signed an agreement that conceded the workers' right to organize freely and independently, and began the fall of the Soviet Empire in one slow process. In 1991, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan declared independence from the Soviet Union. So 11 years later, from Lech Walesa, that little snowball he started rolling down the hill, resulted in 11 years later the destruction of the Soviet Union. Well, less time than that, but 1992, an 11-day standoff at Ruby Ridge, Idaho, between government officials and an armed family headed by self-proclaimed white separatist Randy Weaver ended with his surrender. 3 people: Weaver's wife, his 14-year-old son Sammy, and his U.S. Marshal William Deegan, had been killed during the siege. In 2016, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff was impeached and removed from office after the country's Senate found her guilty of having used Senate bank funds to cover up a budget deficit in a run-up to her re-election in 2014. And famous birthdays today. Will feature biography, not a birthday. It was Princess Diana of Wales. Died on this day in 1977 at the age of 36 in a car accident. Also dying was Dodi Fayed, also dying in that car accident. And he's a footnote to history because he's not British, apparently. I don't know. He was a rich Egyptian. He died in it too. He was dating Diana, I guess. That's probably why they had her killed. I don't know. We'll see. It'll come out someday what really happened. I'm sure it's being suppressed. 161. The birthday of Commodus, Roman Emperor, was born this day in 161. Jahangir, the Emperor of India. Jahangir was born on this day in 1569. Van Morrison, Irish singer-songwriter. And it's a wonderful day for a moon dance. Van Morrison was born in 1945. Richard Gere, famously officer and gentleman, was born in 1949. And Rania Al Abdullah, the Queen of Jordan, was born on this day in 1970. And what day is it? So we finish this off. It is... What are you eating today? Well, before you eat, it's National Matchmakers Day. It is National Diatomasius Earth Day. Okay, we're going to have to click on that one to figure out what the hell they're talking about there. International Overdose Awareness Day. No food so far. Okay.
Oh, no. I can't eat any of this stuff.
It's National Eat Outside Day, so whatever you're going to eat,
I'll go in the garden.
Outside.
Yeah.
Trail mix. It's National Trail Mix Day.
Oh, yeah.
So just pick up a handful of dirt and eat it. There's a trail mix. Just stuff you find on the trail.
You get stuff and put it in a bag.
And it's National South Carolina Day. So the only food you're going to have a shot at is basically not specific food. Trail mix. It's like a conglomeration of stuff in a bag.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay.
Then we're going to look up National, whatever I just said. National Diatomaceous Earth Day recognizes the diatom and the remarkable mineral it creates. Most people know of diatomaceous earth because of use it around their homes. Some they use it as a filter, swimming pools, and natural insecticide. And diatoms, still don't know what it is. It's white chalky stuff.
Okay. So it's some sort of anti-insecticide, or actually just an insecticide.
Biologists understand diatoms, single-cell plants. They form diatomaceous. There's got to be a word that's easy to say there. And are indeed the lungs of the earth. Amazingly, diatoms produce 3/4 of the world's new oxygen supply. So, hey, okay. Thank you for the oxygen. Your story.
Okay. Well, that's been Allison here from the Netherlands. I'm going to go into the garden and lick some dirt, I guess. And we will see you on Friday to tie up this week of news on Before Coffee.
And this is Roger in the United States signing off. For this, the comprehensive news of planet Earth for August 31st, 2023 on Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.